I'm not ashamed.
What did we learn in our study of Matthew? That is the question that we seek to answer today as we conclude our study of the book of Matthew on walking through the Bible.
Honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
We have now come to the 146th and final episode in our study of Matthew. If you have missed any episode or would like to re-watch this series, you can find all of them at www.eastendchurch.org by searching under the media pull-down menu for the W.T.T.B English podcast link. So having now completed our verse-by-verse study of Matthew, it is a good time to reflect upon what we have learned. In our introduction of the book, found in episode 2 of this series, we listed some possible reasons for Matthew writing it. But the one that ties them all together, and hence the one we're going to focus on, is that Matthew's intent is to provide readers with proof that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, the King. Matthew did this in many ways, but he began by showing us that Jesus was from the seed of Abraham and the seed of David. For Jesus to be the Messiah, he had to be from these two houses. For Genesis 12 verse 3 and 2 Samuel 7 verse 12 would prophesy this. Therefore in chapter 1 we have that list of names that many people like to skip because the names are hard to pronounce. These names, though, were extremely important for the Jews and something that could be verified not only by believers of that day, but by skeptics as well. Having now established Jesus' lineage, Matthew then went on to show that Jesus was the Messiah because he fulfilled all of the prophecies about the Messiah. Matthew used the word fulfilled 14 times in this book to refer to Old Testament messianic passages that either Jesus fulfilled personally or that were fulfilled by others concerning him. And that doesn't even count other allusions to prophecies made about the Messiah that were fulfilled in Jesus. Matthew showed that Jesus was born of a virgin in fulfillment of prophecy, that he would be called out of Egypt in fulfillment of prophecy, and that he would be called a Nazarene in fulfillment of prophecy. Matthew showed that innocent children would be slaughtered in search of Jesus in fulfillment of prophecy, that Jesus would perform miracles and bear our infirmities in fulfillment of prophecy, and that people who didn't want to understand his message wouldn't, all in fulfillment of prophecy. As we study through the Old Testament and the Bible overall, we're going to see hundreds of prophecies that Jesus had to fulfill in order to be the Messiah. Some of these prophecies were in his control, like performing miracles and being of excellent character. But some of these prophecies were not in his control. That the soldiers cast lots for the garments of Jesus was not under his control. That Herod threatened his life, forcing the family to move to Egypt, was not in his control. Matthew showed us all of this to make his point. Jesus is the Messiah because he fulfilled all of the messianic prophecies. Jesus said in Matthew 5:17 and 18, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." If Jesus didn't fulfill the entire Old Testament, he isn't the Messiah, and the world is still under the bondage of sin. The odds of fulfilling just one of these prophecies is fairly high. 2, smaller, but the odds still fairly reasonable. But to fulfill the hundreds of Old Testament prophecies found in the Old Testament, only one person could do that. The one whom they are spoken of, the Messiah, Jesus. By fulfilling all of the prophecies, Jesus fulfilled the law of Moses and paved the way for the new covenant. Matthew also showed Jesus to be the Messiah, the King, by showing us that he had authority. All kings have authority to make law, interpret law, to judge the people, and to rule a kingdom. So if Jesus is a king, he would possess this authority. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew 7, verse 29, the people marveled at his doctrine, for he taught with authority and not as the scribes. In Matthew 9, verse 6, Jesus showed that he was God because he had the power or authority to forgive sins. In Matthew 24, verse 30, Jesus would show that he had the power to execute judgment. He cleansed the temple in Matthew 21, verse 12, causing the chief priests to question his authority. However, even they could not in the end dispute that Jesus possessed authority. And then, of course, in Matthew 28:18, Jesus proclaimed that all authority had been given to him in heaven and on earth. So Jesus had the authority of a king, but did he have a kingdom? Many would say no, for they misunderstand the kingdom. The kingdom was not going to be an earthly kingdom, but a spiritual one, which Jesus would reign over from heaven itself. Many of the parables recorded by Matthew began with, "The kingdom of heaven is like." Jesus went about teaching the people to repent, for the kingdom of heaven was at hand or close. And then in Matthew 16, 18, and 19, we have the kingdom identified. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. The kingdom is the church. Jesus' death did not prevent the church from being established, and he rules over that kingdom even to this day. So yes, Jesus had the authority of a king and a kingdom to rule over. Which brings us to the final way that Matthew shows us that Jesus is the Messiah, and that is that he died on the cross and then rose the third day. Simply dying on the cross wasn't sufficient to remit the sins of the world, for many people died on a cross. What proved that Jesus' death did purchase the forgiveness of sins is that he rose from the dead the third day. Jesus was seen by the soldiers at the tomb, by the women who came to the tomb, by the disciples, and by many others that Matthew didn't record. Isaiah 53 was the prophecy that the Messiah was to die, but that he would rise again. Since Jesus accomplished all of this, as Matthew has laid out, Jesus is the Messiah, he is the King, and as such, we need to obey him. With that, we conclude our study of the book of Matthew. The Lord willing, in the next episode, we will be returning to the Old Testament and begin our study of the book of Exodus with an introduction to that book. We hope you'll join us for that discussion as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.